Thank you so much. Thank you, Andrada. Thank you, MIRCEA. It's my first time today here. It's an honor for me to open the cybersecurity stage. I understand it's the first year ever. So, besides the obvious and what Andrada just mentioned, there are some things when we go and talk about security or cybersecurity, and the first thing that crosses my mind is like, why are we even talking about this? I mean, there are a lot of companies that do security. There are a lot of producers that incorporate some security features within their products. So why are we talking about cybersecurity? Why am I talking about cybersecurity? Well, cybersecurity can mean a lot of things. One of the common misconception is that it's about malware. It's not only about malware, it's about network forensics also, or networks. It's about products, it's about connected devices. And it's also about, I don't know, smart houses or smart cities or whatever you wish. So there are a lot of layers when it comes to cybersecurity. It's pretty much like, onions, like one movie said at some point. And just like onions, it makes us want to cry. Besides the intended pun, the idea behind it is if you look at the statistics, for example, the statistics that we've done at CERT-RO, you will see that in 2016, almost 40% of the Romanian IPs were involved in at least one cybersecurity incident. I don't know if that's a lot or not. I don't know how well the other countries are doing it, but still, in my opinion, it's quite a lot because we don't see everything. We only see some of the things that our partners from abroad push towards us. We get to see the ugly part of cybersecurity on a daily basis. For example, there are people who get hacked and they come to us and we provide guidance, we provide them sometimes the means to get over that problem. But most of the times, what we see, what we see is this. Like big companies failing. And most of the times it's like, well, these guys, they're pretty big. I mean, look at Equifax. They had a breach losing 143 million people the data. So 143 million people were affected by that. Tough. You have another crisis at NHS in Great Britain where people were prevented from getting medical help. I don't know, is that something that we should be aware of? Is that something that it's scary or not? Most of the times when we do on-site recovery, and sometimes we do for public institutions, for example, the first thing that they tell us is, I don't have anything of value. Oh, really? You don't have anything of value because it's this mentality. Well, the first thing that any type of company or public institution does is to assume that it cannot happen to them. Cybersecurity is about something that is very, very far away. It doesn't touch them until it does. And then there's the second line over there. It's like, oh my God, this happened to us. Or the best case scenario is when someone in that company or institution asks themselves, what if? What if it will happen to us? That is the best case scenario. But most of the times, and I'm sure that you all know this, and the reason for that is you're here, you're interested about security. Well, most of the times, this is what you're dealing with. So I wouldn't be very confident in the fact that everyone knows about cybersecurity. One of the greatest things that we can do is raising awareness. And I'm sure you've heard that every time, at every conference, someone tells us, oh yes, we should raise some awareness about cybersecurity, but pretty much nobody does anything, or tries to minimize the effect because it doesn't happen to them. It's not their data. One of the other things that sometimes we hear is, well, if I don't have anything of value, I'm not a target. Well, that's very wrong from different kinds of reasons. Because if you're a company, then you have some data that you want protected. That data differentiates you from your competitors. If you're a person, you have personal data that you don't want exposed publicly. And it's pretty much a choice between the data or the company data and privacy. And here's how things are connected. But most of the, whoa, no. So, this one. So, risks. People tend to look at risk as like, maybe like an insurance way of doing things. And try to put a tag on that, a number. It's usually a price, you know. We get to see risk as something that we can afford or not. That may be true in some cases, but not in all cases. Unlike every other domain, in cybersecurity, we're not really aware of the risk, and I'm not sure that anyone has done a serious research telling people, well, this might happen if. But when we go out from our offices or from our homes, when we go out down the street, we're risking something. We take risk. We take a risk not being injured by a moving car. We take a risk by, I don't know, whoa. Yeah. We take a risk. Okay, thank you. Sorry. But we're accustomed to risk-taking because we know those risks. We know what we're facing. We know how to tackle that risk. We know how to avoid situation in which we may be in danger. When it comes to IT world, that's not really the case. And that's not really the case because, let's face it, when it comes to the market rewards people that provide innovation now. If you're providing innovation tomorrow, nobody cares. If you're providing innovation now, then you'll probably have a product that you're going to sell. And that's good. But also, we should take into consideration that everything comes with risks. Now, I'm not against innovation, and it's far from me to say that. But still, we have to take into consideration what could happen. What if it will happen to us? So, I would like to start more of a debate. It's not like a monologue that I'm trying to push for here. And it's something that I would like to do, to interact with you and see some of your opinions. But now I want to move to the next slide, which, yeah, great. How safe are we right now? And there are a lot of people saying, well, we're going to provide you this report, this is going to rock your world. That may be so in some areas. We also provide a report. It doesn't mean that we'll rock your world, but it's just another report that you can take into consideration or not. It's based on what we see. Again, we're not seeing everything. But when we're looking to our alerts and our incidents, and I was mentioning earlier, 40% of all Romanian-based IPs were involved in at least one security incident. That's something we should be thinking about. We're also talking about malware. Do you have any idea what's the most common malware right now? Well, as far as we see. Yes, no, maybe? Okay. The most common malware until 2016 was configure. Some of you may be aware with the term or not. It's a worm that was developed in 2008. Okay, so the reason why we're still dealing with configure, actually there are several reasons, but one of them is because we use pirated software. And okay, we get it. It's fun to get something that you need without having to buy it, but sometimes that software comes with bonus software, bonus being the malware. And there's another reason. Configure at some point did something very, very good or proficient. It spread it in the networks like wildfire. And cyber criminals, they're using that feature. They're incorporating that feature into their botnets. They're trying to push that, and of course, to infect as many hosts as possible. So this is not about only, let's talk about security devices, let's talk about security malware, let's talk about security networking or something like that. We should be very, very careful when we evaluate our security, because security, it doesn't always mean the reactive side. You have to have procedures, you have to have equipments, you have to have skilled workforce, and you have to have people that enforce those procedures. And one of the common misconceptions is that if you throw money at a problem, it will go away. That's not really how it works, because most of the times we've seen companies, we've seen also public institutions buying a lot of magic boxes that were going to do a lot of wonderful things. They're going to protect them because they just plug them in. It's not true. If you're looking again at the report that we've been giving, you're going to see that almost 60% of the alerts that we're processing are vulnerabilities. Now, vulnerabilities can mean a lot of things. Again, it can be some open server that you don't need to hack in order to use it in one attack, or it can mean just vulnerability of some software. If we're talking about vulnerability of software, there's another layer or discussion. There are people that do research and find vulnerabilities, which is great. But then what do they do with them? And now, again, there are two options. That researcher can sell that vulnerability to someone, can be a criminal or not, and that someone would exploit it. Or that researcher could be encouraged to have an ethical approach and try to make everyone safer by reporting that vulnerability to the producer. Something that we tried to do with an initiative called Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure. That initiative caught some wind, if I can say that, because it's now part of something called Global Forum for Cybersecurity Expertise. What it basically does is to provide a framework in which researchers and the people that produce all kinds of solutions, may it be software or hardware, they have a way of exchanging information without putting people in danger. So hopefully this initiative will get through, and we're going to see a memorandum in which more and more countries will adopt in order to promote this type of behavior for a researcher. And one of the main challenges for that is that most of the times companies get to say, well, someone has looked for this vulnerability. They must have sold it. So we're going to press charges. Yeah, that's great. But if you're going to do that and press charges on the one guy that tried to help you, well, that's not going to happen again for a while, or maybe like never. And the only option for a researcher is to go on the black market and sell that vulnerability or do public shaming. And that's not really in the best interest of anyone. Because we rely on technology. We rely on technology on our work. We entrust technology with our data, with our private lives, and so on. But if we're looking at the big picture, there are so many pieces of puzzle that just don't fit. And it takes a coordinated effort to make them fit. It's not going to be something that we're going to do at CERT-RO and we're going to knock everyone from their seats and say, well, this is amazing. It takes a lot of effort from everyone. And it's really a team effort. I know it sounds maybe cheesy, but it's a coordinated effort, and I really want to make sure that this message goes through. I was talking about, earlier I was mentioning the fact that innovation is one of the engines that provide a lot of traction for technology, and especially in IT security. And there's one phrase that I like. It's called security by design. It's nowadays pushed by the European Commission, and pretty much all policy makers that, I don't know, got to read a little bit about cybersecurity, they're going to see this, well, let's make things security by design. And that's wonderful. But I think that we should move forward. Security by design has one flaw. You can make it as a producer, you can try to implement steps that will prevent your app or your device or your product, whatever it is, to be vulnerable. But the human component will always be vulnerable. And if the human would take the decision to change the things that you have presetted in your products, they will get infected. And then they will still blame the producer. So I think we should move forward from security by design to security as a mindset. And now comes the awareness. Because awareness is more than you should be aware that technology fails. No, awareness is something that we should have as a way of thinking. We should be aware that everything that we do comes with risks. We should be aware that everything that we work at might be misused, might be hacked, or whatever. And what measures are we going to take to prevent that from happening? Are we going to just stand by and look and say, well, bummer, this happened, or I'm not a victim, I don't have anything of value, or these guys, they're big, they must have known that they could be victims. It's not always something that is outside us. We can do something about it, and that's how we think things, how we design things, how we approach things. Again, in my opinion, this is a mindset. Another great thing is automation, and I love this subject. I really, really love it, because pretty much what we take for granted right now are automated processes. We look at technology and say, well, this does some wonderful thing, whatever. It's actually an automated process. You could have done that manually, but, well, after years of evolutions, we found out a way of doing it easy. And sometimes automation is very well regarded from the producer side because, well, it provides innovation. You will get to do things that you weren't able to do before. But it's not always a magic lamp. You're going to do automation, everything will get fixed. You can do automation and things might get wrong at some point, or you will implement it wrong, and again you have to have the mindset. And a few weeks back I read about the three artificial intelligence entities that Google has programmed, and I was like amazed. I mean, they got two of these AIs talking to each other without the third one knowing it. So it invented an encrypted language that nobody understands how it works. I mean, that's innovation. That's wonderful. But artificial intelligence is the next thing. It's the next generation of whatever. How cool would it be to have one of these artificial intelligences to program them to rob banks? I think that would be awesome. We're going to see a lot of people looking, oh my God, but I've got all these magic boxes. And, well, we're not sure about the implementation. Things are working, but maybe not that much. I'm very keen to see how automation will solve our problems, our daily problems, how we will become more evolved. Maybe we'll have a lot of time for ourselves. Maybe we'll be in that position in which we'll have time to evolve as human beings while an automated process is doing whatever we did until now. I would love to see that moment. But still, it's not a magic lamp. And still, we should take everything with caution. And if we're going to implement security as a mindset, then definitely we can reach that point safely. Now, that was what I wanted to say today. And if there are some questions, I would be very happy to answer them. Yep.
They don't have tough questions for you, I will, so.
Okay.
You can ask him questions, whatever you want, but please state your name, your title, and your company. Adina will help you with the mic. So, anyone?
Tough crowd.
Yeah, shy people.
Yeah.
We're talking about technology, so in technology we have a lot of shy people, me included. Okay, so I will ask you a question.
Okay.
Name, Andrada, title, journalist, company, freelancer. So my question is, where do Eastern European organizations fall behind Western European ones in terms of cybersecurity?
Well, that's quite an interesting question because it's a different mindset. And I'm going back to mindset again. Usually Western companies or Western mentality is, let's develop things, let's do things and go one step further. And again, it's wonderful to have that. But most of the times, they also have the budget and the funding to provide resources to that extent in which they will get next step. Eastern companies, they have a more pragmatic approach that is based on the lack of resources. So they're usually using the resources better. But I don't think that's always something that we should be proud of. I mean, we could get people that are very well skilled to be paid like in a Western country. And because of the, let's say, reasonable amount of money that an IT specialist costs in Romania, they get to be part of teams that are working for the western part of Europe or the world. I'm not really a fan of dividing East and West or West and East because I think this is supposed to be a coordinated effort. So we should always have in mind the same things that I've said earlier, that I mentioned earlier. I wanted to really raise awareness about that. If we're going to produce technology, may it be devices or software, with security in mind, everyone is going to benefit. So if you're going to use, oh yeah, this is good because it's cheaper, or this is good because it's safer, I don't think that's really a choice. I would go for the safer one. Yeah.
Please. Adina, if you can help us with the mic.
I'm Cristi from Orange, Romania, senior integration engineer. And I'm curious if, as a challenge for cybersecurity, do you have in Romania a public forum or something where people can actually interact on these topics, and if they can receive notifications in case of a cybersecurity attack?
Okay, so when it comes to cybersecurity, what we do, we try to provide awareness through different types of media. We try to reach out through social media, we try to reach out on our website, but having a forum, like a web-based forum, it's not really working right now because the interaction on the forum is quite low. Most of the interaction that we're seeing is on social media, and it's pretty much the biggest reach out that we have.
I have one more question,
Okay, sure,
because we
sure.
have time. I know that you're involved in quite a few European projects, and we all know that malware knows no borders. How is communication going across the European Union?
Okay, so across the European Union, there's something called EU CERT network that's been established with the NIS directive last year. So pretty much every computer security incident response team that has a national or governmental constituency is part of this network, and we're trying to exchange information about threats, about malware, about any kind of activities that are suspicious or not. But the reality is, if you're going to go beyond Europe, you're going to see that most of the times it's a personal relationship. Most of the times everything relies on something that is called circle of trust. I hate that wording, but still. Circle of trust means that people exchange information with other people that they trust. Not in an institutionalized way, not in a formal way. They usually look for that guy that they know that provides a lot of guarantees, or at least some degree of trust, in order to interact with them. So that's one of the reasons in which it's very important to have interaction between people. Like today, you have good interaction when it comes to cybersecurity incident response teams all over the world, but there is no way you can replace human contact. I would stress on that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mircea.